Welcome back to another episode of the Art and Skill of Coaching podcast. Sometimes a small shift in language can lead to a major shift in perspective, and helping a client reframe or rephrase a single thought can fundamentally alter the way that they experience a situation, the meaning they give it, or the emotional reaction they have towards it. And it could even unlock momentum when there was previously resistance or confusion or stagnation. And what's remarkable about this is that it doesn't even always require this complex, lengthy intervention. In fact, the most powerful coaching tools are usually the most simple. I've seen so many coaches overcomplicate their sessions because they have this sticky thought and believe that breakthroughs require depth and these intense and highly specialized interventions. And don't get me wrong, there is a time and place for that, and those are appropriate and really useful when the time is right. But some of the most effective tools come from just understanding the psychology of how people think and how flexible our thoughts can be, and having simple tools that we can use in the moment that create profound results in the long term. And one of the most research-supported tools in both therapy and coaching is the technique of reframing. And this is actually something I do in every single session with every single client every single day. I even do it in my own self-coaching every single morning. It is that effective. Now, let me talk about what reframing is. It's a cognitive technique, which just basically means it's a technique we use for our thoughts that's based off of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That is the most in-depth study and universal approach that is evidence-based, and it's based off of psychology. And at its core, basically it helps clients shift their interpretation of a situation by challenging any unhelpful, distorted, or quote-unquote negative thinking, and ideally taking it a step further and replacing with thoughts that are more neutral or realistic or helpful or healthier. And in practice, what this helps a client do is just disrupt these automatic and often memorized and conditioned thoughts that they have to help them access a different type of thinking. And when we can open up a different type of thinking, it's also going to open up new emotional and therefore behavioral possibilities. So let me break down how to use this in a coaching session in a way that is really simple and effective. So there's 3 steps. Step 1 is you want to identify the thought. And you start to do that by just listening and taking notes and noticing, what is the client repeating? What is the flavor of thoughts here? What is something that they keep coming back to? And just notice if there's a core belief or thought that seems to be contributing to the stress, to the stagnation, to the self-doubt. And oftentimes, just to give you a little tip, it sounds like an absolute, like this is, or there aren't, or I am. It might sound something like I'm too busy, or I always mess things up, or things will never work, or I can't do that. That can usually give you an insight that that is the thought that we want to work on. And then step 2 is you want to evaluate the thought. I think what happens in coaching spaces a lot of times is they'll start to challenge it or insert a new thought, but do not skip or mistake what step 2 is. It's evaluate the thought. So instead of directly challenging it, which is actually just going to provoke defensiveness and make the client dig their heels in and fight for it even more, you want to invite the client to just explore the validity of the thought. Ask for examples, ask for evidence. And what I like to do, it's just my style, you can figure out what works for you, is I like to do this through curiosity or light humor, because that oftentimes will kind of soften the resistance and create a little bit of shock to their thought system. So for example, if a client says to me, I'm too busy to grow my business, I don't have any time, I might ask something and I might chuckle when I say it so that they get the tone is, okay, wow, you are super busy. When's the last time you found time to shower with all those things on your plate? This gently invites them to recognize that yes, their time is limited, but they do have time and that they are making choices for how they are spending that time. And what that does is open the door to reframing, which is step 3. And again, you can offer a new perspective. I really like to elicit them because rather than telling the client what to think, and it gives them an opportunity to reject it because it is or isn't in alignment with their current baseline belief, you want to ask questions to help them generate a more constructive or realistic alternative viewpoint. So for example, I might ask something like, okay, well, what time do you actually have available in your day? Or I might ask something like, okay, you are showering every day. It takes about 20 minutes. What else could you do at that time? Or where else could you find 20 minutes? Or alternatively, you can just offer a gentle reframe, and maybe that sounds something like, okay, well, it does sound like you don't have unlimited time. I get that, but you might have more flexibility than what it feels like right now. So what that's insinuating is that, yes, I'm validating that you don't have a lot of time, but the feeling is that you're too busy, maybe not the circumstance. Again, the goal here is not toxic positivity. I hope that you can see that all of these alternatives, all of these questions, all of these reframes are focusing on healthy, neutral, realistic thoughts, not this toxic positivity that you have all the time in the world, because that is just going to create even more resistance and defensiveness because it's not accurate and it's not true. What we're really trying to do is create cognitive flexibility here, which is just creating mental space for more helpful thoughts that are going to be grounded in reality and that a client's going to be more readily able to accept. Let me give you one more example to really drive this point home and kind of show you what reframing could look like. So let me give you another example to kind of bring this point home in terms of what reframing can look and sound like. So say you have a client who's 40 and they have worked their way up the corporate ladder for the last 15 years and they're really good at their job. They got their degree in it, went right into the field and have worked consistently for 15 years, and they're ready to move into freelancing or consulting. They are competent, they're experienced, but maybe they're feeling stuck in this transition and they're constantly second guessing themselves. They feel hesitant to promote their services. They're feeling a bit of that imposter syndrome or anxiety or confusion creep in. And maybe the presenting thought after having this conversation and gathering information from them is, I'm starting too late, right? Maybe that thought is supported by quote unquote evidence that other consultants have already a few years of experience under their belt, or that they were capable but not ready and they quote unquote should have done this years ago. So step one is identify that thought, I'm starting too late. And what you can kind of see here is that the client's expressing this underlying belief that their timing is wrong or bad or too late, that they're behind, implying a sense of failure and inadequacy, or that it's not going to work out for them because they waited. This belief is what's fueling the feelings of self-doubt and the behavior of hesitation around building their business and going full-time. So that's step one, identify the thought. Again, step two is you want to evaluate, not challenge the thought. And so maybe that coach responds with curiosity this time by asking questions. Okay, well, yeah, you could have started earlier. What do you imagine would be different if you did start 5 years ago? Or maybe we conquer the thought around other people or further ahead. Maybe you ask, what advantages do you think others have that you don't have? And what, again, this does is it doesn't challenge the client, but it invites them to explore and evaluate the assumptions underneath the beliefs that they have, which are just thoughts that they've accepted as true. They probably aren't even true most of the time. And what this process does, this questioning, this curiosity, this intentional evaluation, it reveals the distorted thoughts, the unhealthy thoughts, like the comparison bias or the hindsight bias or the imposter syndrome or the discounting the positives. You might also ask something like, well, are there any strengths or insights that you bring to the table now with 15 years of experience that you wouldn't have 5 years ago? That could be valuable. Again, these questions gently guide the client to consider alternative lens. We're not trying to force it down their throat and telling them what to think. We're just helping them evaluate what they're thinking and be open to different perspectives, and highlighting that experience and maturity and professional credibility are assets, not liabilities. But we can't say that to them. We have to help them come to that conclusion by asking really good questions that will bring that to the surface. And then at that point, when the client is receptive, you want to move into step three, which is offering the reframe. You can offer it ideally, like I talked about before, you want to elicit it. So with insights drawn from that conversation, from step two of evaluation, you can help the client craft a new and more empowering perspective or thought or statement. And the goal here is not to deny the original feeling, because there's a little bit of truth to that. They probably could have started earlier and they might feel intimidated by people that have more experience as a freelancer than them. But again, we just want to shift the narrative to something that's going to help them to take action and move forward. So maybe at this point in step three, we might ask something like, okay, well, what if it's not too late at all? What if your timing is exactly perfect based on all of the experience, all the clarity, and all the clientele you've built over the last 15 years? And then when they start answering that question, okay, how does that feel differently to you? We're just shifting the thought. And maybe the client might say something like, well, I do know a lot more now, and maybe it's a more strategic time for me to go out on my own with the extra 5 years of leadership experience where I got a behind the scenes look at the bookkeeping and the systems and the strategies to bring the clients in. That could be helpful. Alternatively, like I talked about before, a coach could even just offer a light reframe through humor or just offer the thought. Maybe that could sound something like, it sounds like you didn't start late. Maybe you started when you were ready. Or maybe you started when you actually had everything you needed to go out on your own to make it sustainable. You could always just offer a reframe and see how it resonates with a client. Either way, the goal is that the client starts to see that it's maybe not too late, that they didn't start too late. That's just one lens that their brain offered them, but it's not necessarily the most accurate or helpful one, or one that's going to help them move forward with their business. They can gain a sense of agency and responsibility and power. And by the way, reframing is not like say something to make the client feel good or gaslighting or bypassing the situation. Like, please hear me when I say that. There's a lot of research that has consistently shown that reframing done in this way, using these 3 steps, using this technique, reduces stress and anxiety. It improves emotional regulation and enhances resilience, increases problem-solving capability, and strengthens self-esteem and self-efficacy. And perhaps more importantly for coaches, what it does is it helps a client break through the stagnation and into action. Clients who are shifting their thinking are far more likely to actually re-engage with their goals and problem solve with confidence and move forward and figure it out. Reframing is deceptively simple, guys, but it's incredibly effective. It is a practical tool backed by decades of psychological research, and when used skillfully, it can immediately improve a client's insight, their motivation, and their agency. So definitely try this tool in your next session and notice how just a well-timed reframe, whether you offer it or you elicit it through those 3 steps, can shift a client from stuck to strategic. And remember, it's not about forcing a positive spin. It's about creating space for more helpful thinking, okay? And if this episode resonated with you, I definitely encourage you to check out the Art and Skill of Coaching. This is our advanced training program designed to help life coaches master powerful and evidence-based techniques just like this one. The waitlist is now open for our fall class. I'll throw the link in the show notes. And if you're not already subscribed to the Coach Question of the Week, now's the time. Every single week, I send out one practical coaching prompt, question, or tip straight to your inbox, perfect to use for your own development or with your clients. It's free and it's a favorite among our listeners. I will also throw that in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If it was helpful, please take a moment to leave a review, comment, and share this with your communities. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new episode to help you master the art and skill of coaching.